Hey, what's up, everyone? This is David Greenspan, and you are listening to an all-new Season 3 of the Mindshare Podcast, a proud member of the Industry Syndicate Media Network. Additional podcasts are available at mindshare101.com and on all the major podcast platforms. This week's episode is sponsored by the Buzz Conference and Kit's Keep in Touch Systems. Make sure you connect with the Buzz Conference by visiting their website, www.thebuzzconference.com, or by following them on Instagram at The Buzz Conference to keep tabs on all the awesome events they host, including these two coming up. 1, Buzz Western Canada Collect and Collaborate on May 27th. 2, Luxury Connect and Recreation Investment Mixer on June 10th. These events are always loaded with value, so be sure to follow the Buzz Conference to stay in the know. And of course, Kits is always with us. Kits offers a fully loaded cross-channel marketing suite for the real estate industry, including tools to help you manage your business, build mindshare, and drive even more sales. You can learn more on my site, mindshare101.com, by clicking on Marketing. I also want to share that we are working to get to 100 reviews on iTunes, and I want you to be a part of it. If you have already, thank you. If you have not yet, please take 2 minutes, go to iTunes, rate the show, and leave a review. It really is that easy, and thank you again in advance. Today's episode is number 130. She is a mindset and performance coach. She is the best-selling author of 2 books. 1, Home of the Soul, which is a number 4 bestseller in mental and spiritual healing, which shares her incredible true story of rock bottom to thriving and passion-filled. As well as 2, She's No Longer Silent, the award-winning number 1 bestseller in gender studies, which includes a collection of stories by women who have found their strength by overcoming trauma and tuning into their intuition. An avid participant in the community, she is loaded with credentials. She is also a speaker, top producer and real estate broker, NLP Master Practitioner, and a strong advocate for mental health support for real estate professionals, and she has trained agents across Canada. She is also the host of her own podcast called Moon Magic, which teaches you to harness the power of the moon to achieve your goals. This week on the show, I am joined by mindset and performance coach, Katie Romagnolo. Katie, welcome to the Mindshare Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here today. Welcome, everybody. We have an amazing show. I'm just so stoked in the background here for what we're going to do today.
I got to tell you, I'm really excited to dive into this topic with you today. I mean, first, I'm excited to have you here. I know we had met back a couple of years ago at a dear friend of mine, and I know a friend of yours, Kathleen Black's Ultimate Team Summit. Kathleen is a colleague of mine in the industry. She's got an amazing coaching company. And you and I actually met on stage. And I remember my wife, Jennifer, was there with me. And she was at the back of the room, like scribbling notes, just jaw on the floor, like watching you, listening to you. And I got to tell you, she brings you up every now and again here at home and just talking about, sort of the message that you've got and the things that you're up to. And so, it's just timing, timing with what's going on out there right now. And this topic that is near and dear to my heart as well, that everybody struggles with when it comes to mental health. Even just stressing over stuff that, maybe doesn't deserve our time. It doesn't deserve, it doesn't deserve our focus, but the reality is the pain of anxiety and loneliness and depression. It is very, very real. And I believe that COVID has really amplified that. And with everything going on out there, this whole situation there's a lot of people closed off to getting help, right? They almost don't want to talk about it with people. And because all of this, it's just, anyways, I'm excited that you're here. So I was going to ask you, before we dive into all that awesomeness, can you give our audience a background, a little bit of who is Katie?
Oh, goodness. A little bit of a background. Okay. So you did such an amazing intro that, like, my goodness. And I just want to also touch on how much I love your family. Like, you have this beautiful little, like, amazing family that's going on here. And I remember meeting Jennifer for the first time too at that event. And then we ended up, we ran into each other in the hall, and she was carrying like all of these coffees for so many people that we were waiting for. And I didn't realize it was her. And I'm holding the door, and we ended up sitting right beside each other after we turned, and we're like, just started laughing because I'm like, oh my goodness, we were just doing the coffee thing together. That's so hilarious. You've got just amazingness around you. And thank you. Yeah, so glad to be here today. And all right, so where do I start? Now, I'm a mindset and performance coach now, but I absolutely never intended to be one. It was not on my radar. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said, like, what is personal development? And this is something that not a lot of people know about me unless they really knew me in the years before, where I would have honestly told you 5 years ago, I didn't even know who Tony Robbins was. And like, that is no joke. It's not even an exaggeration, where I hadn't read a book in like 15 years. And I was really ashamed to admit that at first. But like, here's the truth of the matter. I was in a dark place at certain times in my life. I needed help. And I ended up really dealing with what was behind the scenes to my own personal anxiety. This is how I got here as a coach. I really went through the experience myself to deal with all of the things that happen, not only in terms of like stressors within work as a real estate agent and a broker in the industry, but like family stuff from my past, and just so much that tends to get triggered when you're in the limelight of working as a salesperson, right? So I found myself in 2017, I was on a really great real estate team. I was a top producer, had been for many years, close to 10 years in the industry at that point. But what a lot of people didn't know is I was struggling with a tremendous amount of anxiety behind closed doors. And I hadn't told my husband, my family, my colleagues, nobody that I was feeling this high pressure of anxiety each day. And it got to this point where I would be, driving home after work from a client appointment, listing appointment, showing. And the second I would get in my car and close the door, I was crying. And I couldn't even put my finger on in the moment why I was crying. It wasn't some hard deal that went bad. It wasn't like I needed money and it wasn't happening. My life was amazing in a lot of ways. I had a great husband, had a good job, had a great income, but what was the problem? And because I couldn't put my finger on it, I felt so much shame about having anxiety that I should feel so grateful. I shouldn't have these feelings. I shouldn't be nervous at 10 years in the industry going into an appointment. And I started to say that I had social anxiety. So this is my problem. I'm great at what I do. I've got a lot of skill, but I've got social anxiety. And the label itself sort of perpetuated in my mind, feeding, okay, you've got anxiety. You're saying you have anxiety to yourself. Now this is what it is. And it was this vicious cycle of I wasn't actually doing anything about it. I was just saying I had it, and not to anybody else, but just to myself inside. So finally, in 2017, I find myself at a real estate conference. Now, this was a Kathleen Black Ultimate Team Summit where I was around all these other top producers, this really great energy. And I remember trying to get out of that event for the weeks leading up to it, like you wouldn't believe. So, yeah, every excuse that I used to have to get out of things, because when you think you have social anxiety, you don't want to be around people.
This was the 2018 event?
This was the 2017.
Okay.
Year before that.
I think it was 2018 I met you.
Yeah. Things changed drastically, right?
Like, oh my God, had you told me 2018, I would have been like, the girl that I met was going through that just when I met her?
No.
Anyways, yeah, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. And so I'll get there because and the shock on your face, I love seeing that because you really got to experience like who Katie is really versus who I was back in 2017. Such a short period of time.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there in this conference. I really tried to get out of it by saying like, well, no, we're too busy with clients. I can't be away for 3 days. It's, I can't be away from home, all of which was totally untrue. We had admin staff and support team and all of that to help with the clients. And so I find myself sitting in this room with all of these other amazing top producers and thinking to myself, I don't know how to be here because I don't know how to network. I don't know how to say anything to anybody without feeling like my hands are shaking and the anxiety is getting the better of me. Now I'm thinking, okay, I'm just shy. I don't know that I'm cut out for this industry. Like 10 years in as a top producer, I'm saying these things, right? And so what I did was I tried to get out of the big room, right, into one of the more breakout sessions. I was a little bit more intimate. And in that group where I thought I was hiding and not having to network, I actually connected with a team of amazing coaches who really introduced me for the very first time to what could be going on unconsciously in all of the stuff that I was doing each day. So why some of this anxiety I couldn't make connections to. And it was the first time in my life where I sort of put my hand up and said to a stranger, I'm struggling with a lot of anxiety right now. And I remember those words coming with tears. I was pretty ashamed to say them at the moment. And this is one of the things I'm so passionate about now is the stigma that we all kind of feel,
shivers,
right?
I'm picturing you doing that and like mustering up this energy, this nerve to finally go, I haven't told anybody this.
Yeah.
I'm about to do this right now.
Yeah.
That must have been hard.
It was extraordinarily hard. And especially for someone who felt like they were too shy, not cut out for business, not outspoken their entire life. So saying words out loud to that effect, admitting I wasn't this confident, put together person was really unbelievably difficult. So that, though, was the catalyst to the rest of my life to now. To only a short year later, I found myself completely in love with this coaching work that got me through what was really like the dark night of my soul. What really cracked me open to who I naturally am. And now that I look back to who I was as a child and a teenager, like that person was not, didn't have social anxiety. That person was not shy. I just forgot who that person was altogether for a whole bunch of reasons. If we've got like 15 hours, I can tell you all the stuff we worked on. But it sparked this interesting thing that then led me into, okay, I'm going to train as a practitioner. Then I'm going to train as a master practitioner. Then I'm going to train as a master hypnotist. And I kept falling in love with the work and being surprisingly to myself really good at it, which shocked me. Every time I was good at something in my life, I was like, what? So I slowly built my self-confidence. People started to ask, like, what on earth are you doing? 6 months later, you're a different person. Your business has skyrocketed. I went on my own, started my own, venture in real estate as a solo agent. And 1 year from that moment, I was on the stage for that very same conference. And this time, not afraid to speak about networking, but instead speaking to the entire group on stage about conquering fear, stress, and anxiety in your career.
So are you still selling real estate? Are you focused strictly on coaching now? What's the deal there?
Yeah. So I am like 90% coaching, but I also really, really love real estate, right? Like it's part of my blood. And I coach a lot of real estate agents, industry professionals. So it really helps me to keep a pulse on what's going on in the industry as a broker to, have my foot in the door a little bit here and there. But my passion is really in with working with my clients.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, just to get a little sense of that, right? So let's go back to that then, because the story that you were just sharing in terms of kind of making that realization, I wanted to kind of dive a little deeper because I believe, if I'm correct, that your book, Home of the Soul, which, as we mentioned off the top, is a number 4 bestseller in mental and spiritual healing. And again, I know that through our own digging here, that really shares the entire story. When you talk about having this 15 hours, that one there does, I believe, shares the story of going basically, rock bottom to thriving and passion filled. And what I was going to do there was sort of go, tell us a little bit more as you've kind of just started with that. But I guess if I'm somebody that is struggling with that sense of anxiety, and I want to maybe go to that moment right there with you for a second, because I think a lot of people, I know myself, Katie, I struggled with it. I've got times where I struggle with it. And I think that everybody in their own right way has that inside of them and sometimes may not notice what it is. Mm-hmm. Why are you feeling like you're caving in? Why are you feeling stressed out? Why are you feeling anxious? Why are you feeling like you can't breathe? I know I was having a conversation with a coaching client of mine recently, and she's out having a special time right now, but she's stressing about the things back at the office, kind of what you were just saying. And it's that thing to kind of try to center people and say, look, there are moments in time where you really have to internalize what's going on right now and appreciate the small things that you're doing or appreciate the bigger picture in life. But it's so hard, as even you said, it's like everything's going well. I know I've got people back at the office. So what am I stressing about? And I guess the question becomes here, like, that feeling, how do we recognize that feeling? Mm-hmm. And in the same breath, when you said you didn't even share it with your husband, why not share it with your husband? And then sort of what held you back there? But in the same light, as you move forward to that event, what caused you to all of a sudden go, I want to talk. I got something to say.
Yeah.
And what can people do to take that and run with it? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of, what's that takeaway there?
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, well, let's start with what is anxiety here. So anxiety, This is the thing that sometimes people don't realize is when you're starting to feel anxiety, this is a different level than regular stresses. Okay. So anxiety is happening when and only when there is a future disaster film running in your head about something that is going to happen. So what is happening is instead of, being in the moment, being present and working on whatever you're doing, somewhere in the back of your mind, something is thinking about, well, next week I've got that appointment, or when I go back into the office, there's going to be a disaster because I haven't been able to communicate all day with anybody. It's the future that we're thinking about when anxiety is creeping up. So at that time, think of this. The mind and the body really doesn't know the difference between something that's actually occurring and something that you're thinking might occur. And there's a lot of studies on visualization, how the body internalizes what you're experiencing within your mind and how it really translates into it not knowing if that's what's going on or not. So the problem with anxiety is as you're thinking about what could potentially go on in the future, and chances are it's this disaster film that, most of the time doesn't really happen, but we really worry it does, right? And as that's happening in the mind, as the body is experiencing it, and it is so much worse than that event ever actually taking occurrence because we experience that thought over and over and over again until we reach the point of that future time. Now, at that point, the body has released all these stress hormones. It has decided, it thinks it knows that this has actually happened in our lives, and it's created what I call muscle memory. So this muscle memory around getting really good at having anxiety. So the more you have anxiety, the more you prep yourself to think that this is what you do. And it's training your mind, your body, your hormones, your everything that goes on in a day. It's training it that this is the response that we do when a thought that comes up about the future occurs. So you can see how this can be a really difficult cycle to break on your own within that thought cycle, right? So when I'm saying to myself, I have social anxiety, and me deciding and self-diagnosing that, what's happening is now I'm thinking about all the times I'm going to have social anxiety and creating that future scene of what has never, ever actually even happened in my life because I'm deciding that's the reason why I feel this way. We all want answers, right? I want to know, okay, what is the reason why this is happening so that I can then change it? Well, the simple answer that maybe somebody has said before to you, and we, sometimes we don't hear what it is that we really need to hear in the moment because we're focused on the anxiety, is that it really just is about flipping the script of what it is you're thinking is going to happen. This will change not only your thought patterns around it, but it will physically start to decrease the way your symptoms are being experienced. I used to really suffer from panic attacks, right? It would get to the point that my breathing, my heart, I ended up in an urgent care one time from inflammation around my aorta because I was freaking myself out so badly. And it was all stemming from my mind. Nothing was actually ever occurring that I was thinking was going to happen. So one of the reasons why this was so difficult for me to talk about was because I had built out my life with this mask. I pretended for many, many years of my adult life to be somebody that I absolutely was not. And at first, this was not intentional. This started with that little phrase we hear so many times, fake it till you make it.
Right.
Right. And there's a lot of value in those words in terms of like embodying what you need to do, practicing and, getting out there and taking action steps. But for me, what happened when I'm thinking, well, I have social anxiety and I need to fake it. So what does a person without social anxiety do? And that is whatever I made up in my head that really had no tangible proof as to what that person would be. And that was a very cold demeanor. So I thought that I had to be like straight-faced in business, right?
Okay.
That I had to be really, really like strong negotiator. And that meant being aggressive and all of the things that my personality isn't really naturally. I'm a lot softer than that, right? When you get to know me.
Yeah.
So admitting to somebody that I had anxiety meant in my head that I had to admit that I was a fraud. That's where it ended up in terms of all of my circular thinking around it. So if I was a fraud, then I really wasn't a success, which meant that everything I had done in my entire life was really for no reason. And I was just a failure. And that happened in an instant in my mind that's what was going on.
It's so interesting that even when you position too, though, to try to change that future, instead of disaster film, it's what does that future look like? You actually couldn't picture yourself as that future, which made it even harder to pull out of that.
Yeah, bingo. Right? I hadn't experienced anything different in so long, and especially not within my career. And this is where like this unconscious work. So working with the unconscious or subconscious mind, where we look at all of the experiences that have happened throughout someone's entire lifetime. That's every thought, every feeling. And the big one that's important here is every feeling about every experience you've ever had. So we will all internalize our experiences differently. And something that is, like today, like this is great and exciting. I absolutely love any chance that I get to do anything like this. But for someone else, it might be terrifying, right?
Yeah, totally right. Well, so that's what I was going to ask you. Like, even when you look and say, okay, so if my anxiety was not necessarily, let's say about, being on a show like this or whatnot, but maybe it's what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Why are they doing it that way? Maybe they don't care about me. And it's a lot of these, these thoughts that we make up in our mind and about things that may not necessarily be true. So how would we get past that then? I'm sitting here going, I've done everything I can today. Why did they say that? Or why didn't they call me back? Or why are they treating me that way? Or what do you think they're thinking right now? Yeah. That's the thing. How do you get out of that then when it comes to that anxiety of that thought? Because again, oftentimes you're just making up exactly that, a future that has not actually happened. And now you're stressing over that until you get the actual answer of like what it really is. But then people make knee-jerk reactions on how they're going to react to something and may take the wrong road in dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, we all think so differently. So there's this way that our minds naturally want to communicate that sometimes we don't realize is very different from someone else's. And all day long, we have all of these little things that happen. Maybe I pick up the phone, make a phone call, I see a text message. Everything's a little event that happens in my life all day long. Well, as that event comes in, it's going to filter through who I am based on my past experiences, the feelings and things I've gone through. There's all these filters that we tend to have that are very unique. And when that particular little event, whether it's big or small, happens in the day, as it passes through those filters, I'm going to have a unique thought about it. Now, that thought might be anxiety. That thought might be excitement. Whatever it is for me will be individual in the moment. But that's what produces that response. So the behavior that happens, which is oftentimes that feeling of just being like really low and I don't want to answer the phone because maybe this is somebody I don't want to talk to. Mm-hmm. The difference is if somebody else had a different experience, say it's a top producer who is used to doing prospecting calls, right? And they love picking up the phone because it means business and it makes them happy and they love being an extrovert. Well, that set of filters will be so different that the behavior that pops out will be drastically different. They won't be able to understand the anxiety around it, right? So the main thing is a lot of the work I do is emotional intelligence. So learning what it is that happens as our emotions are processed, because when we feel like we have something that is unique to us happening, it becomes, well, nobody understands, right? And that type of cycle. And when nobody understands, then you don't want to reach out for help. So learning that there is some tangible scientific ways that really we communicate and that everyone may have a different response that really has nothing to do with you sometimes, right? Like negative comments we get really a lot of the time, it has nothing to do with what I said. It had something to do with what happened in somebody's past experience that is triggering them and they have to outlet for it. And I'm the person who happened to trigger it. So the more you can really learn that, like, what does this have to do with me? The times when I am feeling anxious, what does this have to do with me? Am I nervous about something? Do I feel like I don't know what I'm doing right now? Do I feel like someone's going to judge me? First, asking that question, like, what does this have to do with me?
Working with my clients and when we go through these moments where like we're stressing out, and I always use this sort of 3-step approach to analyze the situation, define your role, and determine the outcome. Yeah. Right. Because once, and it just goes in line with a lot of what you just said, right? Is like, this may have nothing to do with me. It might be completely separate. And so again, when you analyze, you might realize that. What is your role? Really nothing. What is the potential outcome? You've done what you can. Or it could be totally different. You might be completely involved. You might realize like, this is on you. And well, this could potentially happen, which therefore could bring on some, another onset of anxiety. But then there's also some action steps to take to actually make it all come to life or deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
What are you seeing right now with, you're talking to a lot of agents. What are you seeing? What are you hearing right now from our industry when it comes to mindsets as an overall?
Yeah. Overwhelm. Overwhelm is most definitely the overriding theme. And we're caught in this cycle right now where, from the outside perspective, you may think, okay, real estate agents, they're raking it in right now, right? Like the market is fantastic. They're busy. They don't have to look for clients. People are ready to buy. They're wanting to make top dollar if they sell. But what's on the backside of that? The backside is that there is so much more that needs to be done to manage also the mindsets of our clients. Right? So imagine somebody who's gone through all the same traumatic social stuff that's been going on and being through lockdown and having a lot of the things taken away that we love to do. That compiles. And as it compresses on each and every person, you then deal with a client where maybe they're a little bit more triggered or snappy when they can't find exactly what they're looking for. They maybe have to compromise. And those regular cycles of working with clients where, a lot of the times we've got therapist hat on, right? Like anybody can relate to that who has been an agent, and dealing with our own emotions, our clients' emotions, maybe the seller or the other buyer's emotions is a lot to handle. So most people's plates are quite full. And as much as you may be doing more deals, you're doing a lot more work, multiple offers, guys, right? Like it's not everyone's dream. Trust me, you talk to an agent and people would prefer a more balanced market depending where you are. If you're seeing multiples, right? It's contributing to feeling overworked. Yeah, most agents.
I'm hearing a lot of the same. And I asked that question because I think it's something that everybody tuned in live and or on the recording right now. Important to understand if you're feeling that way. I'm hearing it from coast to coast. Katie's hearing it from coast to coast. We're hearing it all over the place. So right there, like very simply put, you are not alone. There are a lot of other people going through this right now. And it's very much that. It's a byproduct of the market. It's a byproduct of the fact that people are overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of extra work happening. I was having this conversation last night with somebody about how we're actually working a lot more now than we probably were before COVID hit in, just from, again, the routines and the way people are going at it every day.
Yeah.
But I also will say this. It's a moment in time right now. Just like anything else in life, it's a moment in time. At some time, I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just being realistic here, right? What goes up must come down. What comes down must go up. You better, whatever. There's cycles through everything that happens in life. And right now, this is all about making hay while the sun shines. So as you're out there and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, take a moment. Go relax. Take a breather. Take a minute to just collect your thoughts. Talk it out with somebody. Then keep pushing forward, because right now is, again, a good moment to really reap the rewards of a lot of what's going on, no matter the frustrations you're experiencing. Because trust me, firsthand, I know exactly what's going on, and I know where people are getting their anxieties from. Your podcast, all about this stuff, and as is a lot of your overall messaging. And I am a big believer in this goal setting.
Yeah.
And it took me some time to come around to this, Katie, like literally big time. I've shared this story many times when I'm that guy in the audience. They're like, okay, time to set goals. I'm like, dude, all right, I'm going to go make a phone call. Let me know when you're done this part. I just want to make $1 bajillion, take over the world, and see you later. Realistically speaking, though, once I did come around, I have never, ever looked back. Like, I don't waver from goal setting. I think it's the most important thing you can do. It's like, if you want to get there, you better know where there is, or you're never going to get there. But knowing that you believe in goal setting as well, you also have a unique approach to it. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit more about how do we harness the power of the moon to achieve our goals and gain those massive results?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this topic up, because it is like the other half of me that people don't realize, the unconventional career coach. I've been dubbed in so many circles. And this is because there's some interesting things that we can learn from cycles. Now, think about that in terms of just like logical stuff, right? Everything is a cycle. Like you said, what goes up must come down. Right. So the interesting thing about moon cycles, and I actually spoke about this on the Think and Grow Rich World Tour, how this connects. I wanted to ask
you about too, because that is super cool. That is super cool.
It blew my mind. We'll get there after. I still can't even believe that I did that. But this is what I talked about, because there's a very specific set of like cyclical patterns that I do when it comes to goal setting. And I have noticed that this has been really true in terms of allowing things to flow naturally, but it helps with dealing with emotions when we have highs and lows. So this particular way of doing goal setting, I'm going to give you the 4 maybe like main cycles. And you can do this not even necessarily in connection to the moon cycle. One of the reasons why I like tying it to the moon is because we have this tangible thing that happens about every week. We cycle through one of the major 4 moon phases. So we've got new moon, we've got first quarter moon, we have full moon, and then we've got third quarter moon. And as it shifts, it really just is the size of the moon that we see in the sky. But what it represents metaphorically is the way that we tend to express creativity, how we plant seeds and grow our intentions, how we release emotions that might be attached to certain things that we want or that didn't happen, and then how we change and correct our course. So it's this great format if you were to stick to this as a 4-week cycle, regardless of timing of energy. Like energetics is another thing that I love that amplifies what I do, but you can think of this in a tangible, logical sense just by doing the steps.
Okay.
So the first phase or cycle, whenever you're going to start, say it's today, you're going to start on this new plan for your goal setting. What you want to do is you want to really think about, like, what is it that I actually want? Surprisingly, and I'm sure you've probably come across this with your clients, is like people don't realize what they really want because nobody takes the time to sit down and think about it. We're so busy. So first step is really thinking about it. And this is where visualization comes into play, where you're not only going to think about it in terms of lists and, checking off the things that maybe come to mind and writing them down. You're going to think about how it feels to have these things. Really envision through your own eyes for a moment, like, what would it be like if I had this thing that I've been trying to achieve? Maybe it's a certain number of deals. Maybe it's a certain income level, right? Maybe it's feeling happier and healthier, that it's out of restrictions, whatever it is. Take your goal and really feel what it's like to have it. And then allow for that next week that happens after to really just be creative about it. So, maybe keep a journal beside your bed, because you might find that you are dreaming about what it is that you were visualizing. And all of a sudden you've got this great idea of, hey, I could connect with this person and they could connect me with that person, or I could try this. And ideas tend to come to people most during this first phase. So it's just
now,
creativity.
Sorry, I forgive me, because to understand with the whole thing with the moon.
Yeah.
Is this, when you're going through this first phase, can this start today, or is this got to be at a certain time? When we talk about cycles and we talk about really trying to pull out from that, is there a certain time that this has to be started?
Yeah. So the best time, if you're really going to follow this with amplifying the energy of the moon, is your phase 1 is new moon. Okay. So whenever the moon is in new moon phase, you can Google this. I have it like saved into my calendar.
Yeah.
But right now, what is it today? Are we Wednesday?
We are.
So today is first quarter moon. We are actually starting into the next 7 days as first quarter moon. So last week that would have been
second cycle.
Yes, you got it.
I'm learning.
So you are so good at this already. Amazing. So creativity around new moon. If you follow me on social media, I will remind you when it is, which phase, so that you know exactly what to do. And as we shift then into the second phase, which is today, the first quarter, this is all about planting seeds. So we start to make some tangible steps, make some, ideas around where is it that I can take an action step towards the thing that I really want? What do I actually have to do to start thinking about, not just feeling this happening for me, but all those creative ideas, like what are some action steps that I can do? And planting seeds is the really important phrase here, because that often means collaborating with others, right? And reaching out, making that touch point. But when you're doing it with something you're excited about, it tends to be a little bit easier to make those calls, have those connections, send those messages, do that Facebook Live, right? Do that during that first quarter moon phase. Now, after we shift from that for 7 days, now everybody listening, you're going to start doing that this week, right? You're going to start planting seeds,
yes, Katie.
Making calls, taking action steps, right?
Yeah. No, do it. I'm with you 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. No. That's what this is about. I'm going to encourage everybody to do exactly that. If you're not taking notes, if you're watching this live right now, take your notes. If you're listening to this and you're not driving, pause it. Rewind 30, 60 seconds, write it down, and start to really track this stuff. This is a reason we do this, is so you can take these action steps and actually put them in play. It's one thing to hear them. It's another thing to listen to them. It's another thing to action them. I want you to action them.
Yes, thank you. Okay, back to our regular program scheduling here. So next after that is, if you're following the moon, is the full moon. So full moon, you're probably a little bit more familiar with. It's where everyone turns into crazies. Right? When we look at all of the ways that society has said full moon happens. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is an actual real thing for our emotions to be heightened and sometimes erratic during a full moon. Now, there's a lot of reasons behind this. Some are scientific, some are metaphorical. We navigate through, what feels right and resonates for you as you hear information. But basically, the moon itself is responsible for our tides. So it influences how the movement of water occurs on Earth. Science. Okay. So think about how much of our bodies are made of water. So what do you think would happen physically if we know that water is being, pulled like this naturally? At full moon, we get these massive differences between what the tides are from high to low.
Is that why I become a werewolf?
Probably. Probably. Told you, it's a real thing.
Keep going. I'm with you. It's
a real thing.
I love it. It's like it really makes it. There's a lot of logic to it.
There is, yes. And this is what I do. Just bridge like magic with logic, because there's a place for them both, right?
That's the spot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as that full moon effect is happening, we're experiencing it within our bodies, right? So how is that energy being felt? Is that through anxiety? Is that heightened emotions? We don't know for sure, but I know that a lot of people will tell you they feel differently during a full moon and they can't put their finger on it. Some people have trouble sleeping. If you talk to people who work in emergency rooms, you will hear all the stories of how there is heightened numbers of people that come in with these crazy injuries. It's almost like common sense goes out the window and they see an increase. So there's definitely something tangible that's happening. But the great thing that you can do for yourself is if emotions are coming to the surface during this time. So forget even the fact that we've got the cycle of the moon. We know that that's what's supposed to be happening at that time. Maybe you're just following this cycle as a logical thing to do in your goals. Well, what's going to happen when you start reaching for your goals, stretching yourself to do action steps that you've maybe never done before? Well, there's probably going to be some emotions that come with that. That might be fear. Right? That might be self-doubt. That imposter syndrome tends to pop up in this third phase here during the full moon that says, hey, like, who are you to be doing these big things and wanting these things that you were creating 2 weeks ago? Maybe you should scale it back.
Flow again now. I got you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So this is what you do with those emotions. Okay, we all know we have emotions. Some people are better at expressing them than others, but what do we do with them? That's the key. Now, when you're goal setting and you're using this as a pattern to follow, pay attention to what emotions are popping up in that third phase for you, because they are going to be connected to what you need to tackle, release, adjust, or really look at in order to achieve that goal that you were starting to figure out that you wanted. So, for example, if I'm saying to myself during that new moon, that first phase, that I've got a goal that I want to create a podcast, right? There's so many people that would love to do it. And then you hear, well, I'm too afraid to speak, or, I don't know how well I would do. Public speaking, right? Huge fear with a lot of society. Mm-hmm. So how do you get over that hump? So you say that you want to do it. You've got this passion for it. You're really feeling it. I can see what it would be like to be one myself. Then I'm going to start up and do the tech stuff, right? Learn what I need to do in that second week. Okay, now week 3 comes, it's full moon phase, and the full amount of emotions are coming up. And that is, oh my goodness, I have social anxiety. I can't be a podcaster. Those are the thoughts, right?
Gotcha. Okay, then that's where you're into your full moon phase 3 right now. It's this, again, imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So dealing with those emotions, because they're there for a reason. If you don't deal with them, and there's lots of different ways that we can deal with them, but if you choose not to, then maybe they start to subside after a week because you've lost focus on your action steps and you're starting to settle back into that comfort zone before those goals were being achieved. And it really doesn't go anywhere. So what you resist will persist. Right? The next month, when you say to yourself, I've got more flair for this again, my creative senses are coming back, I want to try for this goal again. Well, guess what? Those emotions are going to come back with that creative flow as well. It's just part of the natural flow of how we tend to, grow and expand as individuals and in life and business. So deal with those emotions. There's lots of ways that we can do that.
Okay. So That's 3 phases.
Yeah.
There's a 4th phase. Once you recognize the emotions, once you learn how to deal with those. Now, did we want to share how to deal with those, or is that probably a much deeper part of the combo because now it's isolated to individuals?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can give you some simple tips, and that would be really focusing, number one, on self-care during that time. So giving yourself a break, because this is where that side of you may say that you're not doing enough to achieve what you want, but really you are doing enough. This is the time to rest. Rest a little bit during this time and allow yourself to regain balance. Now, journaling during this time is one of the best and simplest ways that you can start to get your emotions out. And it'll help you to make the connections between, okay, I want this thing, I'm having this emotion. What does this have to do with me, right? Discerning that question on how does this really affect me where I am? Do I have a fear of success? Do I have a fear of failure? So really just journaling. And I like to encourage this by writing down all of the things that you want to release. I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling scared, whatever it is, write it down with physical paper, like not in the computer, not in your notes in your phone. Write it out. And then when you're done, you're going to rip it up or burn it.
Oh,
burning, I love. Do you have a fire pit? I see you have a beautiful fire pit in your
beautiful.
In your
it's
back.
Like 25 years old, but it's still kicking and it does a wonderful job creating fire. But I'm with you. I like that.
Yeah.
Write it down. And look, again, for my audience here, you guys are well aware that I push on the fact that I want you to write in a gratitude journal. And Katie, this is something that, again, there's a massive mindset shift for me of saying, hey, I'm going to write this stuff down. I'm going to write down what I'm grateful for. And what I learned through doing that now for the past number of years was those tiny, tiny little moments in life. There's so many of those that happen in a day that when you truly recognize them and write them down, they will supersede and outweigh and out-trump and everything else, any of the bad that happened today.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what you're saying is, hey, but if you got bad, go write that down, get it out of your head, write it down the same way, because the power of writing it down is unbelievable. And it sounds so simple. It's so simple. And people, for everybody that thinks it's too simple to even actually work, I dare you to try it. And I dare you to try it for like 7 days and watch how your mindset changes. And then when it changes, I want you to message me and Katie and say, you guys were right. Because I know we are. Okay.
Exactly.
And look, and I say that the way I do because I'm a byproduct of the proof of it. Much the same, so are you. But that thing of writing it down and then ripping it up, it's like, you can't beat me.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, exactly. Because if you're feeling those feelings, even if you pretend that you're not, you're still feeling them.
Yeah.
So acknowledge them, get them out. It's a simple way to do it.
That's wicked. Okay, cool. So we've done that. So is there a 4th phase?
Yes. Okay. So third quarter moon is all about making adjustments. So we've bubbled to the surface, all the things that we want. We've taken action steps. We're feeling terrified about it, but we've let it go. We're ready to move forward. And now what adjustments are required based on all of that experience and knowledge that you've put yourself through in the past 3 weeks? So sometimes this is that course correction. This is looking at what you've done and saying, okay, what is working? What is not working? What do I need to adjust? Because I'm about to go into, after that, the new moon phase again.
I was about to say, this whole thing starts again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, because I was about to say to you right there, I'm like, so I did this, I did my adjustments. What happens after? Oh my God, I go back to the top. So where am I now?
Yeah. So now we're in creation mode again, where you can continue to create that thing that you're working towards. Because let's be honest, it's not usually going to take only 4 weeks to accomplish big goals.
Definitely
but
not.
Now you've got, maybe some things that you've done and you've accomplished during that. You're starting your podcast. You've got things set up. You've dealt with the emotions. Now you need to start lining up guests, right? What's the next phase of the goal? What's the next thing to intend for?
So now you're coming up with what you want to do. And then it's how am I going to do it in phase 2? But then you get back to that thing, but they wouldn't come on my show. Right?
It's a whole reset.
You do the whole cycle. And then you go back over to phase 3 where it's like, well, deal with those emotions, deal with the self-doubt, rip it up, write it down, rip it up, and then make adjustments and let's do it again.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's beautiful. It works.
This is habit forming. Yeah. Like you turn this into a habit. Remember, and we talk about habits, right? Trigger, action, reward. Here it is. Let the moon be your trigger. Let this podcast be your trigger, but take action and start to break it down and understand that, whether you tie it back to the moon, okay, or you tie it back to literally phase 1 through 4 and go, I've got 7 days to kind of tackle each phase. However you spin it, I mean, I guess tying it back to the moon probably makes a hell of a lot more sense because, quite frankly, on phase 2, with the whole thing that you explained about that motion of the full moon, it really makes a lot of sense. Like just like totally, it really does. That's interesting. So okay, question of this then, as we talk about goals, right? Yeah. I'm trying to hit goals, and I completely, like I said, believe in you've got to set them. We also talk about, making them big, like really, really big, and like to the point where you almost think like you're never going to hit them. I believe that, and I think that what it does is it drives us forward. It helps us, really create that determination. That maybe stops us from any complacency. I'm curious, I guess, from that sense, like when we talk about goal setting, we talk about big, right? And we talk about that sense of self-doubt around achieving them. I guess there's two things there. One, of dealing with the self-doubt around achieving the goal, but two, what if I've written it down and I said, I want to do X, and all of a sudden, like I'm way ahead of where I want it to be, and I'm like, I'm almost there, and I got still like a half a year to go. Do I take my foot off the gas? Do I readjust? What say you, Katie?
Great question. And I bet you can kind of guess what I'm going to say to that second part with my big smile, but I'll let you see if you're right with what you're thinking and what I'm going to say. All right. So the first part, the self-doubt. Yeah. Right. So a lot of times the problem is not really the problem. For me, I thought I had something that I didn't really have. And I really just had to deal with the fact that I thought that I wasn't allowed to have anxiety. My life was too good. So dealing with what's really underneath. And this is where it can be difficult to do on your own, right? Having that observer role to whatever it is that's going on, you need that outside perspective. Maybe you've got a great coach already. Maybe you've got a friend. Maybe you don't. Reach out to somebody so that you can get that tangible feedback in terms of like, what is your self-doubt about? Because a lot of the times, nobody is immune to that little voice that is that imposter syndrome. So that doubt really might not have anything to do with your skill level, with whether or not you're good enough to get what you want, and even if it's going to happen or not. It has nothing to do with it. So learning to kick that voice out by getting some outside perspective. Once you get good at getting that observer role, you can start to do it for yourself a little bit more and more. Because the first time I'm going to public speak, I don't know if I'm going to be any good or not. I'm going to practice. I'm going to try. I'm going to be terrified. And then I do it and get some feedback, right? Constructive feedback. This was great. This was not so great. Then the next time I know what to expect. Right. But until I really allow for that outside perspective, I don't know. Did I think I did great or did I think I did terrible, right? You need that outside perspective to cut through.
So speaking of public speaking, I remember when back in my earlier days with it, I actually had somebody follow me around, a mentor of mine.
Yeah.
Well respected. Really, really, just trust him, everything, right? Advice, all that stuff. And he would watch me and he'd be there with me and he'd, thumbs up from the back of the room and everything else. And I'd come off stage and he'd be the guy to rah and give me the high fives and tell me how amazing I was. He's like, you feel good. You're like, yeah. He's like, you're the man. You're like, yeah. He goes, sit down. And I remember the first time he did that, I was like, what the? And he wasn't just, he was very, very forward with what he said, right? Very explicit. Yeah. And I sort of sat there like a deer in headlights. I thought, oh my God, man, you just took the wind out of my sails. What the hell was that?
Yeah.
But it was the feedback that he gave me. It was the fact that I was able to be open to it and learn from it. And that, again, it was a big help. Now it's hard. It's constructive criticism. It's hard to hear, but come on, once you hear it, you can get better.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying there about just talk to somebody.
Yeah. And it sounds like he gave you the feedback sandwich. Oh my God. So this is like the great part, right? Pumped you up.
Like I was so pumped. And then like literally we were on a tour, right? So I was on stage the next day and like I'd be sitting there and you'd be like this. And I'd get to that part. And I mean, you've been on stage, so you've got a big audience in front of you. Nobody knows who you're actually making eye contact with, but there were moments I was staring at him, right? As I was doing it to the audience, with the audience, for the audience. And he'd be like, there. And all of a sudden you get that like, yeah, I got it. Yeah. Let's keep going.
Right.
There was that encouragement now, right?
Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah. We got to layer that in. And remember, that's not only just for, people that want to excel and coaching clients, not that, like that goes for family, right? Think about your kids. When your kids do something that you're like, oh, come on, right? Like we got to address this feedback sandwich. You got to make them feel like they've done something well first.
We do that with coaching the kids at hockey and baseball.
Right?
Listen, you did this really well. Here's what I'd like you to fix. Great job with that.
Yes. Because we're human, right? Like we have emotions and we need to know that we're doing something okay with what we're doing, or else you get deflated. Why do you want to do something you feel like you've been beaten down about? It just doesn't work. So feedback sandwich, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so secondly, what was our second point?
Basically, like it was kind of that thing of like one kind of, the goals and going towards them and not getting complacent in the fact that you're getting close.
Ooh,
and I kind of tied it together by saying like the self-doubt / procrastination thing, because again, now it's exactly that. But they're so big. Ooh, I don't know. You know what? Hang on a second. I'll deal with that in a minute. Is self-doubt and procrastination the same thing? But then again, is that all happening because like we don't believe? Is that kind of a thing?
Yeah. So there's probably an underlying thing, right? But that says, I'm not sure, but that little bit of self-doubt happens first. But procrastination in itself is all about probably what I'm going to call a bad strategy. So the things that we say to ourselves that make us do the things that we do. The habits, the process of our actions, all of it honestly is a strategy. So as I'm going to get up in the morning and decide that I want to prospect today, right? I'm pumped up. I'm going to do this. I feel good. And then I, go and have breakfast, and then I work out, and then I talk to a friend, and all of a sudden I'm procrastinating. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. I haven't done anything that I said I was going to do. Well, chances are in your mind, there was a certain number of things that were communicated to yourself throughout the day, like instantaneously. That is this collection of information now. That is what we call a strategy. So one thing led to another, led to probably at the end a feeling that said, ugh, I'm not doing this. And if we can interrupt the pattern of that strategy, that's where we can start to have amazing success with procrastination as something in particular. Like strategies, we can blow out strategies on many, many different things, how we do everything in life. But that's a big one, right? And it tends to work. We do what I call inserting new criteria, right? Allowing for something new to happen in your thought process, like in a very neurological way, in a scientific way that's going to allow you tangible steps to break through procrastination.
Okay. Give me an example. Cause I mean, again, I'm that whole thing about the neuroscience. It's the way we operate, right? Like it really is, right? Like, so it's, but not a lot of people study that enough to understand it all. And we just kind of operate and we get up when we get up and we do what we do. We don't think about the moon. Seriously. We don't think about some of these things pulling at us. We don't think about why we'd rather have that conversation for 30 minutes when we probably shouldn't have had it at all. Or maybe it should have made it 30 seconds, right?
Right.
So what are some steps we can take there then? Like if I'm feeling like I'm procrastinating, what can I do to change it?
Well, the first thing is you want to notice what it is that you're doing in the moment. So think of a very specific time where you knew that you procrastinated. So how do you know it's time to procrastinate? Well, I remember that time when I was supposed to do that thing that I didn't. And then you go back and you think about like, what was your thought process? Okay, well, I saw my phone. I said to myself, I should be doing that. But instead I said, oh, I'm going to go have lunch instead. And you write down like whatever was the steps, including the things that you're saying to yourself in your mind. Right? And then you're going to go and think of maybe another scenario. Okay, something specific. And you start to see that there's a pattern here. I'm kind of saying and thinking and feeling the same things as I'm procrastinating each and every time. So once you can, and now I do this as a trained practitioner, like in a really specific way, but you can start to get tangible steps yourself where we really want to blow out that strategy. So sometimes it's something that you're saying to yourself, that you're feeling, that someone else is triggering and saying to you. We dissect that a little bit, but you can do that yourself by just recognizing what is actually being done. What are the steps you're taking that are creating the thing that you don't want? Because in the middle of that, where you can insert some new criteria is by saying to yourself a couple of questions. Questioning yourself is like gold. When it comes to anything you're trying to break through in life, we need to question ourselves why that thought pattern is there. So for me, what I really love, and this connects to me because I like doing things of worth, right? Like what is of value? Why am I doing this? What is of value to you, to the person I'm serving? What is the point? So if I can insert some questions for myself around, like, if I don't do this, what am I going to lose of worth? And that answer might be different every single time I ask myself that. But like, if I don't get up in the morning and do my workout, that I know is the thing that is holding the glue together with how I feel, right? It really amplifies your results with mindset. Well, what am I going to lose of worth if I don't do that right now? And the key is catching yourself in the moment when you're right before you're not going to do it, right? I'm deciding I'm going to go sit on the couch instead of getting on that treadmill. Well, what am I going to lose of worth if I do that?
Well, okay, I would tell you very, very much, and we know when it comes to picking up the phone and making phone calls and just doing the things we're supposed to be doing out there to build our business, a lot of people get that procrastination around, and you hear a ton of excuses as to why they don't do it.
Yeah.
That said, we know the power of making the phone call. Again, people procrastinate to it. So on the procrastination side, if I was one of these people that said, I'm not making the call, or it's in my calendar, I'm supposed to make it now, but I'm just pushing. It's almost in that moment, write down, why are you pushing that back? And it could be, you could figure out that there's a fear of making the phone call. You could figure out that, I don't know. It's almost like it's your point was, ask yourself, what are you going to lose if you don't do this?
Yeah, what are you going to lose? And that's the thing, right? Behind this, there could be so many things. There could be a limiting decision that you didn't realize that you made about making the calls. Maybe unconsciously you think, this isn't going to do anything. Well, if you think that you're not going to get a result because you've thought that thought so many times unknowingly, then of course you're not going to want to push yourself to do something that's not going to gain any results. But that's not the truth of the matter. Right? It's a thought that we need to challenge.
Yeah. And this is where, when you even started with the whole thing about anxiety, I mean, I'd asked you off the top, but you'd brought that up in the way you answered it and mentioned that it was that future disaster film. Mm-hmm. One thing we know about fear is just a thought that we make up in our mind about an action that hasn't yet taken place.
Yeah.
Which seems like a very similar answer to what you gave me about anxiety. So I guess the question becomes, are fear and anxiety really the same, like one and the same, or is anxiety more just that same fear consistently creeping up?
Yeah. So, okay, great question. Like, this is a yes and a no double-edged sword. So, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we can't have anxiety without having fear, but we can have fear without having anxiety.
This is where I'm kind of going with that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, because think about, like, fear we need. Here's the positive thing about fear. If you are taking a stroll through the Serengeti and there's a lion that is tracking you behind you, and all of a sudden you realize this lion is coming after you, you better want to elicit some fear because you need to get out of there, right? So, like, in a primal sense, we need fear, right? We need fear. But the thing that has happened.
Side note, fear is not all bad.
Yeah. Sometimes it will save your life, right? Like, you hear these stories, people that connect into that fear in that moment that they need to, you get adrenaline, right? The mom who has lifted the car off of the child when they shouldn't have been able to do that. Yeah. That is that positive effect of fear. Now, the trouble is in our society, and this is where I truly believe fear has really shifted in terms of what we've experienced collectively over the years and over the generations, where back when it was important in a primal sense to, when we were hunter-gatherers, right? Different set of rules of life at the time. Mm-hmm. We needed to have fear because we needed to realize when you were in danger, when to protect, when to do certain things. That was survival. But now we don't live that way anymore. Right? But we still have that part of our brain. We still have that part that wants to connect into fear. But instead of something really happening, and now you having to run from that lion that's attacking your camp or your village, well, that's not going to happen. Instead, you're going to walk into the office and someone's going to give you a look and you feel that same level of fear because it's got nowhere to go. It's been sort of like really ingrained in us over the years and has had nowhere to go. So then we start thinking in the future when we walk into the office, what is that person thinking when they look at me that way? Are they saying that I can't do this? Like, am I not good enough to work here? That's where the anxiety then happens.
I like that. I see how you tied that together. So that's where the two blend together, is that thought that it's happened, but now you're constantly thinking about it and it starts to repeat itself.
Yeah. It's the loop. The loop is the dangerous part.
It's a big one, right? And when we talk about the fear of the unknown and we talk about the fear, and I mean, look, again, I said this a second ago, but fear of making phone calls, fear of getting on social media, fear of getting on video. And I think we've done a lot of talking today about actually how to get past that fear. Mm-hmm. And much the same, I share a lot in my trainings is that, when you get past fear, and I always use skydiving as an example, right? And I've never done it before, but we know from people who have, they love it. And the whole parallel there is that it's a scary thought to skydive. When you jump, most people who jump, the minute they jump, they will tell you when they land, it was the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you get over fear, or once you even recognize it, you can do some amazing things. And I might even tie that back to the lion and say, or the lady lifting the car, again, you've recognized it. Now it's a matter of getting past it and realizing, hey, it was just a thought. or it was just a roadblock that I put up.
Yeah.
Continuing that thing of success and sort of keeping an eye here. But, I tell everybody every day, and I practice this myself, and I'll say it to you too, which I'm sure you do, but take 20 minutes today to own your tomorrow. Okay, so again, 20 minutes a day to own your tomorrow. And I live by this, Katie. And what it simply means is, go and get your schedule in order for tomorrow. Go lay out your strategy, go figure out who you have to talk to, where you got to be, what IPAs, income producing activities you have to do, what meetings you've got, what personal stuff you need to do. Figure out where all of the obligations are. Try to really map out what the time looks like out there. And at the same time as you're mapping out all your time, so you know exactly where you're going. And again, there's that whole idea of like when we talk about setting goals, this is me breaking down, the big lifetime stuff into like literally hourly action items for a DMO, a daily method of operation, right? And now that I've got laid into my schedule, I know where I'm going every step of the way. And it's really hard to push me off of that. Procrastination can't happen because again, if I do, there's going to be a really bad trickle down effect. So what helps me stay in line is the fact that I see this stuff. And now from a habit building and achieving, it's that trigger action reward again, right? I see it. I've got to get it done. I get it done, move on to the next thing and keep going. And this is again, how we sort of work through that process. Now, part of my 20 minutes every night, is not only the scheduling, but is me actually taking time to do my intention setting and my gratitude journal. And really, this is how I do my best to stay in the right frame of mind every single day. And it is work.
Yeah.
It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come just because I want it. I have to work at it. And we all have to work at it. So I thought I'd just, for a couple minutes here, I guess we've already addressed intention setting, maybe writing things down as we talked about, put it there, rip it up and throw it out. Just maybe quickly on the power of sort of gratitude and intention setting. Maybe some advice or some tips, something we could say to, convert the non-converted.
Yes, because you need to join us on the other side. It's so nice over here.
We know though, right? Like we know what it is. Yeah. We know the power.
Yeah. So this is where it's tangible steps to like feeling like you've done something. Every time you do something new, it's going to feel like, why am I doing this? Right? Because it's something new. So you want to create that neurology by attaching it to a feeling. Okay, so if you can have a good feeling after doing something, you're probably going to want to do it again. So there's two things that I always suggest to someone who is starting off with any type of gratitude is have an accountability partner. So someone you really love, right? Maybe that's in your household, maybe that's a friend, whoever it is, have an accountability partner to say like, okay, like what were you grateful for today? And share that experience back and forth. Now, here's the key for the partner that is your accountability person. You're going to do what? Not necessarily feedback sandwich, but you're going to pump this up. You want them to feel good, right? Reciprocate that feeling. Allow it to really sink in. And doing this at night, okay, so I love that you're doing that because your brain waves just as you're going to sleep. If you can practice having these thoughts, maybe you're not at the point where you want to write them down and, do all of the goal setting things and the scheduling and everything else that maybe we're doing at this point. But to start off with the gratitude, you can really lie there as you put your head down on your pillow and think about for 1 minute all of those moments in the day, whether, I'm sure you can find one. I've often said like, okay, you had clean water today. You brushed your teeth. Like there's people who
It's true. It is so true.
Right? So the days when you can't think of anything because it's been a crappy day, we all have them. They come up here and there. Think of the thing that you didn't think you'd be grateful for, like walking up the stairs. And just allow yourself to think of a couple of those things right as you're going to sleep. Because you're really suggestible at the time when you're going to sleep. The brain waves at that time, they want to absorb information. So take that as a hint too, not to be going to sleep watching the news.
Or social media. Put it down.
You're absorbing at that time.
The final hour and a half, even 2 hours of you being awake in a night, just put the phone down. Stay away from it. Find anything else to Twitter. Go get an elastic and stretch it if you need to play with it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Katie, tell me this. How do you know it's been a successful day for you?
Ooh, okay. So how I know is not necessarily how I feel, because feelings can really alter once in a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how much energy I have. And energy and feeling are two different things, emotions and energy, right? So the times when I go to bed at the end of the night where it's like, hey, I could actually not go to bed right now. I feel like I've got more to give, but I know like I'm regimented here. Here's my sleep. I've got more to do tomorrow. The days when I don't feel like my energy has been sucked out, that's when I know I've been productive, because I've maintained my personal level of balance. Sometimes being productive isn't about like pushing, right? And doing all the things. Sometimes it's about making sure you're maintaining energy. So I tend to gauge that off of, can I keep going? But I'm choosing not to.
Okay, cool. I like that. Tell me, last words, tips that you can share with everybody who is tuned in, again, live or listening to this on audio, that can help themselves stay in a positive mindset, get out there and build more mind share. And if they're ready to burst, what can they do about it?
Yeah. So the best thing you can do for yourself is a 1-minute movie at any point. If you're feeling like you're that person who's struggling with anxiety or something that's going on you don't want to be feeling, flip your script. Think about the thing that you really want to happen. Imagine it through your own eyes. Run it for 1 minute. You can do this at night when you're highly suggestible, or you can do this any point in the day. Like we all have 1 minute that we can spare. This will help to ease any feelings of that disaster film, right? Like what do you want to happen instead in that conversation that you're worried about? And if you're ramped up, you're ready to go, like you've got big goals, start taking action. Like forget the 50 steps that are going to come, as you're about to burst out the gate here. What is one thing you need to do? And then just do that one thing. I often encourage people to like wipe off the whiteboard and take off all of their 50 million to-dos and break them into segments of 3. I'm only doing these 3 because these 3 are first. And when they are crossed off the whiteboard, the next 3 pop up on there. And if you've got them organized, it helps with overwhelm. Absolutely.
Powerful, strategic conversation. Amazing takeaways today. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you on social? Where can they learn more about you on your website? And where can they get those awesome books? Because there's 2 of them. We touched on one. I mentioned both, but bring those back. And where can people go for more, Katie?
Yeah, so you can find me anywhere online. You can Google me. I am a Katie Mindset Coach anywhere. My website is Katie Mindset Coach. Now, my name is spelled Kady. You're not going to think it's Katie, but it is Katie. And follow me on, I really love Facebook, guys. Honestly, I've got some private groups that I run that are called Conquer Your Fear that really give some more tangible steps, free, private. And you can find me there in Facebook groups on Instagram, Katie.Romagnolo. Now, I do have a free workshop as well. If you're on my website called Conquer Your Fear, it's going to give you some really more tangible steps to do. It's work at your own pace. You have access to it for a lifetime. So go ahead and grab that. And you can grab my books on my website as well. I've got a 20% off coupon for you there. And you can just click through and check the buttons out. You'll be able to find it.
Amazing episode. This has been definitely unique and different for us in terms of, look, I talk a lot about the mindset and that type of stuff. I believe strongly in it. But this was really, really cool to have you on today. And I thank you sincerely for all the time, all the insights. I took a lot of notes. You probably noticed as my sort of scribbling on the side here.
Awesome.
But lots and lots of stuff, because I got a lot that I want to take away from this and learn from it. Again, I believe that mindsets are low right now, unfortunately. I believe that a lot of the advice you shared today is going to help so many people really get past that. And I want to help you share that message even further. So we're going to be doing a lot in the coming days to help get this message out further. But for everybody tuned in, please reach out to Katie, get in touch with her, follow her, tune in, grab the books, just get in tune with what she's sharing, because for everything that we learned today, we only spent an hour together, and there's just lots and lots of content. So anyhow, I encourage everybody tune in with Katie, but Katie, once again, thank you very, very much for making the time for the Mindshare podcast today.
Oh, thank you. I had a blast. This is amazing what you're doing. Just keep it up. And I appreciate you so much.
You're either listening to this on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify. Or maybe you went to my website, mindshare101.com. And while you're on my site, make sure to download your free copy of the Ultimate Marketing Bundle for Realtors. This is a 31-page ebook packed with a ton of tips and tricks for you. Plus, there's a ready-to-go 90-day social media content calendar to help you build more mindshare so that you can get more market share. And if you want to talk about personalized one-to-one coaching to help you get to your next level, just get in touch with me. We'll set up a free consultation call, learn more about what you're looking to achieve, and, well, how I will help you do just that. Also, don't forget that our push to 100 is on. So be sure to please go to iTunes, subscribe to the show, rate us, and leave a review. And if you haven't yet, connect with me on Facebook at Mindshare101 and on Instagram at DavidGreenspan101. I want to once again thank Virginia Munden and the Buzz Conference for sponsoring today's episode. Make sure you connect with the Buzz by visiting their website, www.thebuzzconference.com, or by following them on Instagram at the Buzz Conference to keep tabs on all the awesome events they are always hosting, including these two great ones coming up. I also want to thank Kids Keep in Touch Systems for also sponsoring today's episode. If you haven't checked us out yet, just go to my site, mindshare101.com, and click on Marketing. This has been another episode of the Mindshare Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.